Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to lesson 4-3. Today we're going to go back to estimating. We're going to figure out how we can use rounding in compatible numbers when we need an answer that doesn't need to be the exact answer, or if we need to use rounding or compatible numbers to check how reasonable an answer is that's given to us. If we need to see if that answer makes sense, if it could be correct. A lot of times we'll go back and we'll use the strategies of rounding and compatible numbers to help us figure out how reasonable that answer is. Let's go ahead and start with our video.
What strategies can you use when estimating? The workers picked 14 dozen apples at Ms. Piper's apple grove and 12 dozen apples at Mr. Stewart's apple grove. There are 12 apples in 1 dozen. About how many apples did the workers pick? "14 plus 12 equals 26 dozen apples picked in total. The problem does not ask for an exact answer, so find an estimate. There is more than one strategy you can use to estimate. You can use rounding to estimate 26 times 12. Round 26 to the nearest 10.
Select your answer.
Now remember, when we're rounding, you have to look at the number in the ones place to decide if that tens place is going to move up or it's going to stay the same. We know that 1 to 4 will round a number down, but 5 and up will round it up higher. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the ones place will take that tens place up to the next group of tens. So since there's a 6 over here in the ones place, we know that 2 is going to become a 3. So we know that 26 is closer to 30 than it is to 20. So 30 is going to be our rounded number.
26 rounds to 30. Round 12 to the nearest 10. 12 rounds to 10. 30 times 10 equals 300. The workers picked about 300 apples.
Now pay attention to what happened when we were rounding. Our 26 moved all the way up to 30, so it moved up a good amount. It moved up 4 digits, and our 12 rounded down to 10, which wasn't too far. But now we're going to try using compatible numbers. Now pay attention to how your estimated answer is going to change when we use compatible numbers instead of using rounded numbers.
You can also use compatible numbers to estimate 26 times 12. Replace the factors with numbers that are close and easy to multiply. 26 is close to 25. 12 is close to 10. 25 times 10 equals 250. The workers picked about 250 apples.
So here we can see that our number, our estimated answer when we use compatible numbers was smaller than our estimated answer when we used rounding. And the reason that is because 25 is closer to 26 than 30 is. When we were rounding, we had to change that 26 into 30 because we had to follow a very specific rule. With compatible numbers, you're not bound to that same rule, so you can go to a number that's close by even if it doesn't follow the rounding rule. This is something that I want you guys to pay attention to while you're solving problems. Now remember, you want to pick a number that's close to your original answer, or sorry, to the original numbers that you're working with so that your answer is close to what the real answer would be. So let's stop and take a look at our notes. Now for lesson 4-3, estimate, use rounding and compatible numbers. Remember, when you don't need an exact answer, you can use rounding or compatible numbers. You also use these strategies to help you decide if an answer is reasonable. So an example question that I gave you here is 26 times 19. Now, if I'm rounding, my 26 will become a 30 because that 6 rounds a 2 up into a 3. And that 19 will become a 20 because that 9 rounds the 1 up into a 2. I use my basic facts. 3 times 2 is 6. Tens times tens equals hundreds. So 1 0 here, 1 0 here. We add both of those zeros on the other side. If I used compatible numbers, 26, I'm going to change that to 25, and then 19 becomes 20. Now, I know two groups of 25 is 50, plus that one extra zero, because that's times a group of 10. So that became 500. Now, notice how these two answers are different from each other. And remember, the farther away you go from the actual numbers that you're working with, the farther your answer will be from what the exact answer is. So choose a strategy that helps you stay nearer to the real answer. Now over here, you can see this only moved 1 and this only moved 1. Over here, this moved 4 and this moved 1. The farther away you're moving, the farther away your answer is going to be. So now I stacked and multiplied, and we're going to work on how to do this later. But my actual answer when I did 26 times 19 was 494. When I rounded, remember, I got 600, but when I used compatible numbers, I got 500. You can see how these two are much closer to each other than these two. These two are much closer because these numbers are closer to the original numbers than these ones. Now let's go ahead and get started on our guided practice. Now remember, you can use these strategies anytime to double check your work, even if you solved it the regular way. If you want to estimate or with either one of these strategies, you can do that to check and see if your answer is reasonable. So let's take a look at number 1. It says in the example on the previous page, how do you know you only need an estimate and not an exact answer? So they were asking us, let's go back and we'll take a look. I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. And we're going to go back and take a look. This was our question that we were talking about the apples. So when they say about how many, so whenever you're using the phrase about how many, that tells you that you're going to be using an estimate. They're not asking you for an exact answer when it says about how many. They're asking you for an estimate. So let's go ahead and add that to our answer. When the question says about how many, it is asking for an estimate, not the exact answer. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. Number 2 says, in the example on the previous page, what is another way you can multiply using compatible numbers by changing only one of the factors? Explain how you would find the estimated product. So on that page, we had the numbers that we were using, and they're asking you to just change one of them. So let's go ahead and pull up those numbers real quick so we can solve. So our numbers were 26 times 12. Remember, there were 26 dozen apples, so we want to find out how many apples there are, and there's 12 in each dozen. So we're doing 26 times 12. It says, what is another way you can multiply using compatible numbers by changing only one of the factors? Explain how you would find the estimated product. So if I want to use compatible numbers to change just one, I'll change this one. So I'm going to change this to 26 times 10. And then I'm going to use what I've learned in previous lessons and what I know about multiplying by groups of 10. And I'm going to use my basic facts. So 26 times 1 is 26, plus that extra 0 because it's a group of 10. We add on to the end, so that's 260. Now, our question says explain. So we have to write out our explanation. We have to explain how we reached our answer. I changed 12 to 10 and multiplied 26 times 10 to find my estimated answer. Twenty-six times 10 is 260. Now for numbers 3 through 6, it says estimate each product, explain why you chose the strategy you used to estimate each product. So this is not just solving and tell me which strategy you used. So for number 3, we have 24 times 18. And I'm going to leave some space. Number 4, we have 33 times 31. For number 5, we have 38 times 22. And for number 6, we have 45 times 48. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now you can use either strategy. You don't necessarily need to use the strategy that I'm using, but I will show you one way to do all of these questions, and you can pick either that way or you can choose the other way. You can either do rounding or you can use compatible numbers. So for this one, I'm going to use compatible numbers. So I'm going to change this to 25 times 20. Now I know 25 times 2 is 50, plus that extra 0 is 500. So I use compatible numbers that are close to my real numbers. For 33 times 31, for this one, I think I'm going to use rounding. And I'm just going to make this 30 times 30. Now I know 3 times 3 equals 9, and tens times tens equals hundreds. So there's 1 0 on each one of these. 1 2 zeros here, 1 2 zeros here. So I used rounding because my numbers were already close to that group of 10. Now 38 times 22. Over here, I think I'll use rounding again. Not equal. So this is going to become 40. 38 will round up to 40 because that 8 tells the 3 to move up. 22 will round down to 20 because that 2 tells it to move down. 40 times 20, I'll do my basic fact. 4 times 2 is 8. 0 here, 0 here. 2 zeros there. 4 groups of 10 times 2 groups of 10 is 8 groups of 100, because remember, a 10 times a 10 is 100. I used rounding because those numbers are easier to work with. and easier to use. And for 45 times 48, for this one, I will also use rounding. And I will do 50 times 50. Now I know 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 zeros there, so 2 zeros here. I use rounding because we both round up to multiples of 5, and I know my 5 facts. So any reason that you want to give is fine, as long as it makes sense. All right, that takes us through to the end of our guided practice. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye, fourth grade.